See, I'm just gonna ride the wave until the morning sun. If I just speak into existence, it's already done. It's already done. It's already done. If I just speak into existence, it's already done.
Amani na baraka. It's peace and blessings in Swahili. I'm Dr. Lugene Kennebrew, board member of SissyMarySue Education Fund 501c3. Thanks for joining us and welcome to our podcast called Educating Empathy, produced by nonprofit SissyMarySue Education Fund 501c3. The title of this episode is The Implications of African-Centered STEM. Our guest for this episode is Professor Sharif Beyah. Professor Beyah is a STEM facilitator specializing in hydroponics, aquaponics, and life sciences. He is currently completing his PhD in integrative and functional nutrition. Join us now as we take you to CSN Productions and the beautiful East Falls section of the city of Philadelphia for this dynamic interview. We are thoroughly excited, very grateful to have a young man who is at the forefront of not just African-centered STEM, but STEM in its whole totality. So without further ado, Professor Beyah, please share with the SissyMarySue audience, the SissyMarySue Education Fund audience, a little bit about you and what it is that you bring to this landscape of education.
So my name is Sharif Beyah. I am originally, I'm from Philly, originally born and raised, of course. And so what I bring to the table with that is during my time at Harrisburg University, I pursued environmental science and biotechnology and got those bachelor's. And as a result of doing those two programs, I had to do like these projects that were supposed to be like research projects for credit, like an internship or like a research project that I was able to do. And for me, since I chose two bachelors that I was pursuing concurrently, I had to do like 3 projects. And each of those projects, they were something hands-on that I did. Like whether the first one, it was like building a Tesla coil as I was learning about like mutual induction and, really got kind of swept up in, the ideas of Nikola Tesla. And that led to other like projects in like renewable energy field, like with the microbial fuel cell. So like generating electricity from soil, and then also the dye-sensitized solar cell, which was extracting dye from, berries, and kind of, adhering them to, these glass plates, then like testing the electricity that was actually able to be produced that way. So the project was basically recreating photosynthesis for electricity, which to me was very cool. Like you're literally recreating photosynthesis and you're literally generating electricity from it. So kind of showing what goes on within the thylakoid of a plant cell.
Okay.
Pretty much like how the plants actually literally get energy from the sun that they use to do biological tasks. They use it to build carbohydrates and all that within the system. So that just blew me away. So and it was also hands-on, where I was actually doing the trial and error of, getting this thing to work and troubleshooting it and all the different steps in between of that. So that's kind of the thing that I ended up bringing to the table, was just these hands-on projects that I had done firsthand. And then on top of these were like independent research projects. So when things went wrong, of course I always had my advisors I could go to for assistance and things of that nature. But for the most part, you had to figure it out on your own. Like, okay, this didn't work. Why is that? Like literally testing all the different variables and then taking those variables to the advisors to say, okay, I tried this and this, it still didn't work. And then, of course they would give input and say, well, did you think about this or did you try that? And then of course that, getting one step closer to that solution. So that is, coming into the gate, in my teaching position, like with education, that is what I brought, was that hands-on, that inquiry-based learning, because I had gotten hands-on experience like during college to do that. So
okay.
Yep.
So brilliance, man, brilliance all around. So I just wanted to just to share. You currently is this just your second year or first year of your doctoral study program? Or?
This is the first year. I did first year at Saybrook University.
Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So the program is integrative and functional nutrition. Mm-hmm. So it's looking at integrative practices. So looking at some what people will call alternative, right? So that's Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. And kind of looking at those frameworks. See, because the thing is, Western medicine, what I'm learning is that it provides mostly a framework on health. In Western world, we kind of consider health to be a state. So if you're in a state of healthfulness, or you're in a state of unhealthfulness where you're manifesting a disease, and it's kind of like you're either at those 2 points. And then in the alternative medicines, which is why these things are starting to get attention, like traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, is because it looks at it as a balance.
Okay.
Not a state where it's not rigid, because in those philosophies, health is not rigid, meaning that right now, as a doctor, I diagnose you and I say, hey, you're healthy.
Right.
And the next month, you could not be healthy.
I understand.
Ayurvedic medicine or traditional Chinese medicine would kind of ask a way more comprehensive question that considers you as an individual and your totality of your being, not just your state of health, but your sleep, your which water you're drinking, how stressed do you feel, how and when are you eating?
Okay.
What are you eating?
Wow. Okay.
So it's like that. Like I said, it's how and when are you eating? Are you eating at a hurry at your desk? Like most Americans?
Right.
Right? Are you eating always on the go? Are you eating under stress?
Okay.
Are you eating on autopilot, right? You're not even thinking about what you're just eating. You're just eating.
Just eating.
Because I'm hungry. I needed something. Ran to the vending machine really quickly to get some kind of nourishment.
Right.
Right. And Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine looks at that and says, these are the food groups you should avoid. These are the food groups you should eat more of based on your assessment. You would be assessed by these individuals. So that's currently what I'm learning about in the program right now as we speak. Is just looking at these different philosophies, and I think it's a very holistic way of considering the whole being, the whole person, and just bringing that to the realm of wellness. When we're talking about wellness, it actually takes a somewhat dimensionless quantity, state of health, and it puts dimensions into it. It's how and when are you eating, and when you're sleeping, how and when are you sleeping, how and when are you using the bathroom, how and all these things, just so many factors, how and when are you drinking, and water, and what substances are you mostly consuming. It's everything. That it's very comprehensive.
What I find striking in what you've just shared is that it seems like this Chinese medicine is predicated on your health and wellness, versus us, we're looking to capitalize on the illness. Is that?
So what I would say more so is that they would not investigate anything. And when I say they, I mean typical Western practitioners wouldn't necessarily begin to say, because if you're in a state of healthfulness, Western medicine's you're good.
Okay.
There's nothing to do. You're good. You're in a state of healthfulness.
Right.
but you're clean bill of health. You're good.
Stamp, clean bill of health.
You know, you're good to go.
Right.
And then it's not until you come back later that you manifest some kind of disease, like a symptom of something. You get hypertension. That's treatable.
Okay.
You know, you get congestive heart failure. Now that's treatable. You know what I mean? Like, your clotting factors or your platelets that's treatable. So it's kind of looking at, they just look at that, like what are the biomarkers, what are your levels at, and if they're normal and healthy, there's nothing. There's nothing.
You're good to go.
You're good to go until you are entering a disease state. Is then when you're treatable. Mm-hmm. Now you have their attention. Uh-huh. And that's the thing. So it's like with Western medicine. So with that being said, I just gave you a clean bill of health and said you're good to go. Mm-hmm. So you would think, oh well, I'm good to go. That means I can do whatever I want, eat whatever I want, blah 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 blah. You mm-hmm. continue to eat the typical standard American diet, right, which is not towards healthfulness. And part of that reason is not necessarily because the food choices or the choices aren't always like bad mm-hmm. necessarily. It's just that here when we say something is healthy, right, so like a salad, okay, right, so a salad's healthy, so you'll sit there and American or westernized, they don't see nothing wrong with eating salad every day, okay, all right, because it's healthy, mm-hmm. right, like it's right. healthy. I eat a salad every single day. That's what I do. And it's not just that, it's other things too, like any other think of any other healthful food mm-hmm. that you eat every single day. Right. Traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, they kind of look at that as there's more balance. It's that, too much of a good thing can be bad as well. So it's not just, eat more salad to be healthy. Mm-hmm. It's like eat more of these food groups. And technically in the US we do say eat a rainbow. Right? So eat a variety. But it kind of defines that rainbow because first of all, that's a very vague thing. Eat a rainbow, so that's like eat eggplant, zucchini, like whatever, And whereas again, these other philosophies, they kind of define that more by saying food groups. Like for example, Ayurvedic medicine. I learned about like doshas. Okay. So you have the vata. You have the if I'm saying it wrong, I apologize, but you have the pitta. And then you have the pradha or something of that nature. It's like 3 doshas. Okay. And each of us, if you go to an actual Ayurvedic practitioner, that would be what they would find out. What's your predominant dosha? Okay. And based on that, there's food groups you should already avoid because you would be considered like vata predominant and therefore should eat more of these things, less of these things, mm-hmm. and do more of these things, less of these things. Okay. And I it's hard to pull that off the top because it's like I read about like each of them mm-hmm. at one point. And I think because I found out I was like pitta predominant, and they talk about, and see the thing is, it's not just the food choice, it's also talking about personality. Like they say that these people tend to be, fast talkers. It's like even talking about like they tend to like experience premature balding and graying. Like it goes that deep. Wow.
Having this massive amount of resources and information that you have, how would that play a part of the empathy-driven education that we have? How does that information factor in?
So that was actually a good question because that's something that I'm currently investigating myself as I'm like literally learning these things as we speak. Okay. So really the way that it comes into play, especially with wellness, it kind of emphasizes that wellness in general is a very much, it cannot necessarily work as a do as I say, not as I do model, like how it typically is for us as unfortunately for us as educators. Sometimes we tend to have that do as I say, not as I do mm-hmm. philosophy, whereas this really works very well by practicing what you preach.
When we're talking about health and balance, I want to make sure that you manage a hydroponic farm. the area in which we educate is a massive area of food insecurities.
Right.
So how does what you were doing, which is, I guess I have to say to you, is just a phenomenal work.
And so, as you said, the area we happen to live in is a food desert. Food deserts are known based on your zip code can determine your lifespan because of the food options that are available, and those food options not being conducive to health,
right?
And more so conducive to convenience, conducive to cultural norms, because we eat what we're used to. And that's actually something I see, because not only was I doing it, I was also teaching classes out of that hydroponic system, and even the students would reflect sentiments of adults, because children oftentimes don't have filters, as we know, so they're speaking their minds about how they really feel in terms of working very hands-on with plants, and growing, and especially in an urban environment where a typical we don't have that experience of planting within an urban experience or an urban setting, like that, where you're interacting and actually seeding and trampling and watching these plants grow from seed to plant, like to a plant that's ready to be harvested, like with kale or collards or things like that.
And that's what you're growing inside now. This hydroponic farm is set up as like a trailer. Is that
right? So it's a shipping container, state-of-the-art shipping container that has been converted into a growing space. So it was like an elective that was 9th, 10th, and 11th graders.
Okay.
That worked in the farm, and also like learning, concepts of hydroponics, and just what it means to grow food sustainably.
Right.
Within an urban setting, that's not a traditional farm where would be doing traditional farm practices, and then comparing and contrasting those two as well, where it's like, if you to see what is the benefits, the criteria and constraints of growing within a hydroponic setting, and the criteria and constraints of growing in soil, because as we know, or may not know, that soil quality is degrading, as erosion is happening significantly due to basically deforestation, right? So the removal of vegetation, there's nothing anchoring that soil to keep it there, so it blows away with the wind. And when you do all the tilling, that's what's funny, is that the agriculture, as beneficial as it is also as destructive. So traditional agriculture is actually destructive to the environment, for the simple fact that we only regenerate 1 millimeter of soil per year. 1 millimeter.
Wow.
1 millimeter.
1 millimeter soil per year
is what we generate, and we're losing more than that because of the agricultural, and then worldwide.
That's what I was just thinking.
As we are, as many countries that are developing countries are striving to that experiencing that catch up effect of trying to with urbanization, trying to essentially keep up with the Joneses. Essentially, is what is going on with these developing nations, as they're trying to develop their industries and all that to be able to compete with developed nations and to compete with them in terms of the free market, right, to make their claim on it. And usually it's going to be due through agriculture. Normally those are what developing nations, that's their largest industry, right, as they are striving to urbanize and to start to industrialize as well, to then manufacture goods and all that. So with that being said, it's this race is causing a lot of this destruction and displacement of soil. So as a result, alternative growing practices are more attractive now, right? Like hydroponics does not use soil. And so that's the whole selling point and benefit. Not only does it not use soil, it also uses significantly less water, because hydroponics by definition uses recirculating water. So it's like hydroponics is water working, uses water to do the work of what happens in agriculture by using nutrient-rich water, not just any kind of water. This water has been specially treated with like fertilizers to optimize growing conditions.
Okay. All right.
And that's what aquaponics, with it being, man-made, you can, artificially maintain optimal growing conditions, year round.
How do the folks in the community, how are they able to access what you all are growing in this farm?
Yeah, most certainly. So they have this community fridge that they use to where you can actually get the produce right there on campus. In order to really meet the demands, it's like that's where like data-driven decision making is comes into play, where where to meet with stakeholders to figure out what is it that people want. To you grow what is wanted within your community, and then also be able to deliver that in a consistent manner. Hydroponics can help meet the growing demand of the population, because as population grows and all that, there's more demand on food.
Okay. Yes.
And so since hydroponics is able to optimize growing conditions, they can grow food more quickly than traditional agriculture, while maintaining a much smaller footprint than traditional agriculture. And so it's kind of like, it checks all those boxes. That's what makes it, so attractive at this time, where it's, optimal growing conditions, lower footprint, and then more produce. So it's like those three things that are what people want.
Right. What are the key roles and data points that a farm manager should consider when you're kind of integrating these, I guess they're sustainable practices, is that what you would call them?
Yeah, I mean, it's sustainable practices as well as just maintaining of the farm and just doing what is needed for the farm, which is why I would be there so late, is because running that farm, it was making sure everything goes right. Because even though hydroponics uses even though it uses water to do all the, it's also like semi-automated, where you got these timers and sensors that's able to run. It also runs on the internet. It's an IoT device where it's able to use the internet to automatically water the plants, automatically distribute nutrients, and automatically supply the plants with light. However, there is still that need for a person to do the seeding, to do the transplanting, and to do the harvesting, as well as the maintenance tasks. And so that's the thing. It's like once you kind of start growing, you're really at the mercy of the plants, because when the plants are ready to be harvested, then you need to harvest. When the plants are ready to be transplanted, you need to transplant. When it's time to seed, you need to seed. And that's that whole life cycle, and that's the fulcrum of the lessons I would teach, is what I would call the life cycle of hydroponics, of seeding, transplanting, harvesting. Seeding. Every time and this is what I would ask the class, every time you harvest, you should do what? So every time you harvest, you transplant. Every time you transplant, you seed. Every time you transplant, you seed again. Every time you harvest, you transplant. Because it's like that, constantly replacing that. That's the cycle of every single time. So if you're harvesting, you should be transplanting. If you're transplanting, you should be seeding, because now you have free space open when you do those things. So it's kind of like displacing. And so that's when you get in that groove, then you're at the mercy of the plants, or it's happening at their time. Like when they're ready to go, they will then go. When they need to do what they need to do, that's what would ultimately happen. So that is that is ultimately why I would stay so late at the farm running it, is because of having to do that. So that life cycle, as I'm explaining, you also then have the maintenance. Are the pumps running? Are the drip emitters clogged? Are the is everything, or is it clean? Are the pests under control? Like all of those things, and that kind of stuff.
Lighting as well. I guess lighting would be a factor in
Right, of course. The light would be mostly on the timers, but still, if it's happening the way that it needs to, right? So that's the thing. You get that cycle on board. Now it's like, okay, now you got to clean it to make sure that those things can happen efficiently. Is the algae under control?
Okay.
Are the drains cleaned? Is the floor vacuumed? Is the plant debris has the trash been taken out? Has the nutrients been replaced? With the GSI, that was a classroom like project that I had them do.
Okay.
With learning about that, and that still was with empathy, because GSI, Greenstone Water Infrastructure, the way that works is that it assists the sewer system, is what it does. So it's using green tools, as the city of Philadelphia would describe, is using green tools, and those green tools, and that's what another thing, teaching the students that plants are technology. Because a tool is what you would argue is technology. So a shovel is technology. Gardening tools are technology. So they refer to as green tools. So now in this case, the way a tree is being used is a form of technology, where you're using its own natural process of soaking up water to actually assist with filtration. So these plants soak up water, and as a result of them soaking up water to grow and everything, they are removing impurities. Okay. And so that is assisting the sewer system with not being overwhelmed during heavy torrential downpour. That was a lesson that or curriculum that I developed in 2021. Living in the city of Philadelphia, observing these things and seeing how, there's a push for what they call greener cities.
Yes.
There's a need for greenery, and this actually ties back somewhat to the question before of soil degradation and soil erosion and all that. Part of that is happening because there's not enough vegetation, because a lot of it has been deforested and ripped away to make way for cities. So urbanization of is pretty much that process that's driving that. And what cities are finding is, hey, we ripped up too many of these trees, and it's causing issues. It's causing flooding issues. It's causing water quality issues. It's causing water pollution issues. Right. So these three very big things: floods, right? Floods. Water pollution, right, and killing off wildlife, aquatic wildlife, because once the sewer systems overflow, all that waste from the sewer goes into the riverways, right, and kills the aquatic wildlife in there. And so I was like teaching students all those different disciplines within that, because you got some engineering, obviously, with the GSI.
Yes.
Then you have some biology there with the plants, like how the plants work, like because the plant, what's the anatomy of a plant with the root systems, being able to use that stormwater to, perform biological tasks, like to grow, which of course we know plants, produce oxygen.
Yeah.
Like trees produce oxygen. So it's like GSI is able to kind of, kill two birds with one stone with increasing water quality and air quality.
I understand.
And then the third part, which is a bit of a fringe benefit, but a benefit nonetheless, which is beautifying the city. So it's much better to look at a corner with a bunch of flowers and greeneries and not piles of trash.
Yes.
That's on that we see.
Right.
So that is something that I've been working on in 2021, having students make models of GSI. Having them make models of GSI.
Yes.
And each year trying to refine that even more.
Yes.
To get to the point where it becomes more and more functional.
Yes. Now I saw you shared me a while back a GSI model. Now, did you design that model, or who you had collaborated with that, or how did that all come
Right. So I
about?
definitely used a collaboration with the art teacher, Sharia Freeman. She definitely was very instrumental
Yes.
in helping to design the green stormwater infrastructure.
And shout out to Sister Sharia
Yeah.
on the Black Joy Galaxy.
Right. Yeah. With the poster.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
with the
So
posters,
now she's in science for science technology, which is awesome. So.
Exactly. Right? So
Yeah.
she's very talented. So, yeah, exactly. Very talented individual. So I was definitely able to, continue to make those models. That's the goal, to continue to move forward with it, and just keep going with it.
Okay.
Because one thing I do also know about that is that the children they love that lesson. Years after the fact, they're still remembering that lesson of how how it works.
I saw some of them come into my class while you were in there, and they were talking about. You asked them, and they're like, "Oh yeah." I think one of the 10th grade scholars. He was right on there, like, "Oh yeah, it was a good lesson. It was a good lesson." So.
Yeah, saying that you're remembering it and everything else. So. Yeah, it definitely was interesting, and so that's always the goal of teaching the hands-on with it, to get them to do things like that where they see that impacts their communities that they live in. It shows positively that they learn about their communities. They're going to tend to want to do more for it, and that also goes right into line with producing produce. So why did I sit there and go above beyond with the farm? I looked at that like that is my contribution. Many people think they have to cut a check or something of that nature to solve global warming, or world hunger, or even global warming and all those kind of things. But really, it's those consistent actions you take on a daily basis to make sure that, because one thing is, no matter who cuts the check or whatever the case may be, the next task is consistently producing food. You need to eat every day, not every other day, not every other week, not every other month, not every other year. You need to eat every day. And
You're teaching them how to do it for themselves, and in turn, it's almost like they're practicing Ujamaa. So they're learning it for themselves, for the wellness of themselves, empathy-driven learning for themselves. Now they can impact their community.
Right, and they can impact their communities and their personal families, because as they learn about it and they get to the point where they can do it, because see, there's no limitation to hydroponics with your imagination. Right. So they have these. So you got it in somebody imagined it working in a shipping container. Somebody imagined it working inside of a classroom. Somebody imagined it working on a countertop unit. All these things are for sale that you could go on Amazon and buy a countertop unit for hydroponics that can grow sprouts. So you can have little spices. So you can go for personal use where you just grow little herbs for your seasonings or cooking. Or you can go commercial and raise it enough to actually feed a community. And then of course you have it where they use it outer space. So you have all these applications of this one technology because of the criteria and constraints, and so there's no limitation to it. There's no set configuration. As long as it meets certain criteria, it will work.
It will work. Okay. I want to. I know we're getting close to the end of our time here. I want to have you talk a little bit about the Marquee Who's Who. So talk to us a little bit about that achievement.
So in May or March of this year, I was inducted into the Marquee Who's Who, in which that is basically an autobiographical site of living people that has made significant contributions and impacts to their field. It was something that I was approached with, in which case I, accepted. And that's pretty much how it happened. And of course I was very surprised, and very, honored to, sit there and be able to do that, because it's like, I know that for a while, I've just been a behind the scenes kind of person, and so then to sit there and see oh, hey, this is the person, that is making, doing these things that's, making a difference, and it actually being noticed was something that was nice to see. That it's being noticed, that, if you sit there and you just keep working and doing what you have to do on a daily basis and consistent basis, that you will meet success. Like, you will reach that goal of what it is that you have in store. And so that, definitely felt nice to receive, just because that is what I felt like I was working towards, was that consistency. And like, one of my personal practices, like, I put myself in it, like, one of my personal prides was just being able to consistently produce produce, and also have it in a presentable state where, you're giving tours and the farm is in a nice, tourable state. You can look around, there's not filth or anything like that at all. And it's a functional farm that is growing produce and has been doing so for months.
Essentially what they're doing is they are featuring you as one of their emerging educators in this field of, I guess we want to say, innovative scientific, technological sustainability.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. That's a mouthful.
It is, man.
Right, but it's like, yeah, I mean, that's definitely what it. Yeah, and it's like just all the other things, like just lifelong learning, and of course it's sitting there continuing to add to the knowledge of, in addition to, going to Saybrook and, being in the PhD program, but, getting certifications that will help me, get to that next point that I want to get to, like learning analytics, learning how to compost, learning these kind of 21st century skills, right? Like, composting is something that's technically as old as, agriculture itself, I would imagine, because it's like, as long as plant matter has been produced, like, nature composts and recycles, but it's bringing it in a way in the 21st century where people can do it. Not everybody, people don't know how to necessarily compost like we know how to throw away trash. We definitely know how to throw away trash, and don't know necessarily how to compost. And they're finding that, that is just as important to properly dispose of organic waste, that can contribute to the methane problem. That's how significant composting is that it solves the problem. If you just throw away produce, it would actually become a problem. Right. It's not properly breaking down. So it actually contribute to the methane problem. Okay. The global warming problem. That, just like with cows, like, producing or raising livestock contributes to the methane problem. Literally because of the organic waste that is produced by these animals, the cows, the pigs, the chickens, especially the cows, like beef. Beef has a astronomically detrimental effect on the in the environment compared to any other livestock. Beef is astronomically higher than all the rest. Raising of beef, it takes a lot more energy to do it, and they produce a lot more waste, and it is significant, and it's a contributing problem. And so you have to offset that. And so composting does that. It checks that box of reduce. And then on top of that, it not only are you just, because under normal circumstances, you would just throw it away. Right. And, of course, there is no such thing as a way, but where it would contribute to the methane problem and then become a problem. With composting, not only are you preventing that, but you're actually solving a problem with the soil quality. Right, so like you start composting, you start adding that to your soil. Now you're enriching it, and you're actually enriching the soil. And then you have this dead soil, which is a problem in many deforested areas, as well as like mostly in developing nations, where the soil is degrading because there's no vegetation. So that sun just beaming right down on that soil heats it up. evaporates all the water out of it, dries it out, kills all the organic microbes, kills all the organic microbes, all the organic matter in there, and now you have what is known as dead soil that is devoid of microorganisms. I shouldn't necessarily say devoid because still microorganisms, but it's significant. The biodiversity is significantly lower, and all those sorts of things, all those sorts of problems. So that's definitely. Making those connections, like all of that is somehow related with hydroponics, green stormwater infrastructure, compost, and all those kind of things. And it's just me, diligently getting educated about the problems to be able to then educate, to be able to share that with the community, to let them know here's what we need to do.
Wow.
And it's not, it can't just be one person that resolve these issues. It's going to take an entire community. In this case, depending on the level of problem, it's going to take many communities to solve it. It's not just going to be one person.
So it's like as SissyMarySue Education Fund, their banner song is "Change the World the More We Care." So that's definitely what you are doing. I was about to say, Dr. Sharif Beyah, I already hear it. It sounds good. Oh, it has certainly been a wealth of eye-opening knowledge, pertinent information, for our communities, for all our communities. The diversity, the inclusion, and certainly the empathy-driven education that you are providing scholars at. Man, you are providing scholars with this empathy-driven education in science, technology through all facets of the grades. So it's from the college down to the high school, and it is the unique find. Last question I'll throw out there at you. 5 years from now, what are you doing? What are you actualizing?
Well, by that time, all goes well, I should be pretty much finishing up the PhD program. So the doctorate should be, if not completed, on its way to be. And several of the certifications that I'm working on currently should be done. And basically, I see a lot of the things that we're talking about right here, right now, starting to be rolled out. And in this case, some of them already rolled out and just continuing onwards, where I'm able to then, just move on to the next set of challenges, right? Like now that you have, that's the thing, it's like now that you have brought this solution, now to keep the solution going is the challenge. It's like, and you get one of those hydroponic farms, you got it, you can raise the produce and everything like that, but now the challenge has shifted to consistently doing it.
Consistently.
Doing that where you're able to significantly contribute to the solution.
We hope you enjoyed this dynamic episode. We want to send a special thanks out to Professor Sharif Beyah for sharing his vision with us. Also, to Ms. Carol Sims Neesmith, CEO of CSN Productions, for allowing us to use the beautiful CSN production facility to record this episode. Educating Empathy is produced by SissyMarySue Education Fund, 501c3. Our core mission is advancing education empowerment and access. I'm Dr. Lugene Kennebrew, board member of SissyMarySue Education Fund, 501c3. Take care, stay safe, and be well.
Change the world. You got the power.